Souse us therefore in the powdering tub of thy mercy.
that we may be tripes fit for the heavenly table,
Welcome, Meatsmiths. You are listening to a Meatsmith harvest
restoring husbandry to prosperity.
by means of the traditions of our fathers.
This Farmstead Meatsmith production is made possible by you. If you like it, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/meatsmith and donating at a level you'd enjoy giving at. Your gift helps us increase the quality and quantity of all our free media education. Thank you, and happy harvesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's actually a prayer. I finally did some research on it. That was composed in mockery of excessive popery of Catholicism in England, which they called popery.
That's right. We didn't know that when we first started using it
No, and
over a decade ago.
I still love it. Nonetheless, I took a break for a minute because I was like, "Ooh, it's mockery." Yeah, I could see how it's mockery. But then the reason it didn't immediately come across to me as a ribald insult to Catholicism was because of the context in which I discovered it, which was the ever respectful and reverent Jane Grigson.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in her book, Charcuterie and French Pork Cookery, she tells you how to cook every single part of the pig, everything, but it's not a science project on how to make crazy things delicious. It is an archaeology of tradition, of how it's done.
Right.
And she's a historian, so she has extra fun going back further and finding old references to mesentery and things that we have current sterilized modern terms for, but they had pretty poetic ones for in the pre-modern era, like the leaf fat they called the flare fat or the fleed. It was the fleed.
Huh.
Fleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't use those terms anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of examples of that. But and that prayer, she has that prayer, and since everything in her work has just this reverent tone, and that's how tradition always sounds to modern ears. I think if it's old, and you're a little tired of making stuff up all by yourself in the modern world, then it immediately just has within it this air of authority, security, something true, tried, and real. And that's how I feel about souse us therefore in the powdering tub of thy mercy, that we may be tripes fit for thy heavenly table.
Yes. Well, I also bought a book recently called The Mass and Its Folklore, which I think many of our listeners would be interested in. And it kind of helped you contextualize it, I think, a little bit, in the sense that it was written by a British convert. And he was discovering through all these mocking tones that they're actually just saying the truth, but it comes across as mockery to them because they just can't believe the just the robust things that we actually believe. You know, they're actually making fun of it, whereas we're like, no, actually, yeah, we believe that.
Yeah, and they're making fun of it. It's it's the Anglican establishment for the 200 years that they were disemboweling and dismembering priests and disinheriting and jailing Catholics. And their attitude is distinctly the one of the urbane smarty pants.
Oh, okay.
Set across from the silly, childish fantasies of those little Catholics. And that is clearly the sort of the tone that their insults take, because they had to produce lots of propaganda because they had a Catholic island and they needed to end that. And so everyone, had to be persuaded. And so they wrote these long, like, I don't know how people had time to read these, but these long parodies of all the ridiculous things that Catholics thought the Mass did for you. And you can read through the list and you're like, they're making fun of it. They're saying Mass for them is a source of grace. It's like, yeah. But even great things, you can see what the Catholics actually believed then. And it's, I don't know, it has this flavor of being particularly British and particularly sweet. I just love
I know.
British culture. They believe literally that every hour spent at Mass was added onto your life at the end.
Oh,
Every step you took to Mass was guarded by an angel.
it's beautiful.
And this is just the faith of children, speaking of whom.
Guarded by an angel.
Hi, Thomasina.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
We have a child. Has entered the podcast. But that's just the flavor that it takes. Is basically what it is. It's if we're going to insert it into the Shire, like the hobbits, the quaint, sweet, childlike existence of the peaceful hobbits who derive not just the eternal spiritual good from the Mass, but just a manifold plethora of physical goods. Like if you go to Mass, before you get on your boat, you will have good wind for your passage. Like literally everything. And it's, to us, because we're too smart for our pants, we're like, oh, that sounds like superstition. That sounds irrational.
We're materialists.
And we're materialists.
Yeah.
And so that was the angle that the Puritan, the Elizabethan persecutors took, was this is on its face silly. This doesn't even need to be made into a joke. It's already stupid and silly and funny.
Yeah.
And that was their line. And yet that's how you kill all that is true, good, and beautiful, and poetic, and meaningful about life.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
Because the Mass is so central, there's almost no hyperbole that is actually a hyperbole.
That's right.
When it comes to what the Mass can do.
Yeah. Well, I thought about that this last weekend. I felt serious protection when we had this sort of storm run through our property, and a lot of people incurred a serious damage, and we didn't have a whole lot. We were really protected. We even could have had worse power outage troubles with our walk-in and all of our freezers that are full of meat now, and it felt there was a big they were calling it a land hurricane in Oklahoma, in Tulsa area.
Yeah. In Oklahoma, hurricanes hardly ever happen. But this happened. Sorry.
It did. I even asked the ladies at church. I was like, "Does this kind of thing happen regularly?" Yeah. And they were like, "No, it was pretty rare."
Yeah. So on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, or like at midnight, actually.
That's right. Yeah.
We had a Category 4 land hurricane blow through Tulsa, and so not a tornado. Did not have updraft. It was just wind in a straight line at an extremely high speed. And about a mile south of us, it was clocked at its highest rate. Right, just like literally on the other side of the highway here, at 114 miles an hour.
Yeah.
At ground level, not at 4,000 feet, at ground level. So that's major. It was ripping trees out of the ground, ripping roofs off of houses, and knocked out power for most of Tulsa until today.
In a lot of ways, it was almost
Saturday.
More damaging than certain tornadoes because the tornadoes just has one little path that it goes through, whereas this was just like it just was kind of everywhere.
It was a hurricane.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, a land hurricane.
Brandon got us all up in the middle of the night. Kids were all in their pajamas, just at varying levels of sleep, and I mean, we thought our windows could have blown in. They definitely could have. Or like a branch, could have definitely smacked into our windows.
Oh, it would have gone right through.
Our flagpole was just being ragdolled.
Yes, I looked outside, and the lightning is so frequent. It's basically you can see everything. And I looked outside at about midnight, and it was all of the videos on YouTube that I've seen of imprudent people being caught in the middle of tornadoes. So, the merit of walking outside in a tornadic storm and whipping out your iPhone, that's a thing that happens a lot, and you can see these. And that's what, I did some of that in my research in moving to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so when I looked out my window, that's exactly what I saw. The trees were sideways.
Wow.
And the world was airborne and flying from west to east at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And our flagpole was, I'm shocked it's still standing. It has way more flex in it than I thought. The flags are shredded. They're totally gone. We got to replace them. But it was going from, 9 to 3. Totally horizontal in both directions.
Yeah.
9 o'clock to 3 o'clock and back and forth at a very rapid rate. So yeah, that was definitely we were glad to be soused in the powdering tub of God's mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was the Feast of the Sacred Heart. Our flag blew off of our flagpole, our Sacred Heart flag, the one you kind of see a copy of there. It flew off, and I wasn't worried.
Yeah.
Not at all. It was totally something I may have been worried, about in a previous life, but I should probably go take her back in the house.
Okay.
We've lost babysitting, so.
All right.
But yeah, speaking of the Sacred Heart, we've got a dear friend, Ross McKnight, who also promotes the Sacred Heart, and we wanted to bring him up because he's getting a lot of press right now. We did a year ago. Oh, these wires. Oh boy. Yeah. We did an interview with him. He's the only one we've ever interviewed, and he has been promoting the Sacred Heart, the devotion to the Sacred Heart, but also particularly the enthronement of the Sacred Heart, which is part of that devotion. And I think it'd be good to mention it here. It's June. This podcast might come out in July, but it's a wonderful devotion that does. I mean, you can't just be devoted to it and then live your life recklessly. So it's part of the whole tapestry of living an ordered, within an ordered life within the laws of the church and the laws of God. But it is so good for peace of mind and just putting yourself under the dominion of our Lord in a real way. And so when things like this happen, you're totally protected. I mean, yeah, you might die, but it's like, oh well, that's just my life.
My life is death.
Yeah. I've already died to a certain extent already, so.
Yeah, so if you want to look up what he's been promoting, just type in anywhere, backwater foie gras. And it's great. And at the very least, you'll be encouraged to do the most important thing you can do for any domestic agricultural endeavor, which is to get the final cause sorted out. If you don't know the ends, then you don't know the means. You don't know what means to employ. And the enthronement of the Sacred Heart is that end. And it's literally that thing that you put. I look at it, as it's a restoration of everything that was true, good, and beautiful about domestic life and Christendom. Kind of before everything was was denuded of its meaning and separated from the worship of the one true God, kind of in the modern era where we've been more materialistic. And that's why it's specifically it's promoted in terms of enthronement. So we don't have kings anymore. That's a thing that ended, and that was a big thing to end. That was big. All fatherhood on earth is named after the fatherhood of God, and we kind of assassinated all of our fathers up at around, kind of term ending in World War One, and consequently gave ourselves the gift that keeps on giving, which is politicians instead, which aren't really fathers. And that is a part of the fragmentation and decentralizing of and disordering of culture, in my unfortunately not too humble opinion. But the enthronement of the Sacred Heart is the specific, technical, tactical antidote to that problem. Because Christ is the King. Christ is King, and that is how you enthrone him in your own home. Specifically, with the image of the Sacred Heart, which is the image of his humility, which is a thing that our current rulers, presidents, prime ministers, and other witchwise lack. Something we have not experienced. A leader, a king who lays down his life. And that's what the Sacred Heart represents, the effusion of grace and life. It has the wound of the lance that pierced our Lord's heart. And so it's specifically remembrance of his death and self-gift. So if that is the center of your home, then just like a medieval town, the center of which is the church, things tend to order themselves quite well around that. But that's what Ross has been talking about, and it's pretty great. So I would check it out. He speaks as one, who has who enjoys that order, that domestic order, and it's really interesting what it looks like in the modern era. And I know I'm sort of prejudiced and partial to small family businesses, clearly, but that's what he do. That's what the McKnights do. They are, and particularly unique, they sell foie gras in the United States of America, in Louisiana, and locally, and that is the earnest way they earn their keep. They're not subsidized, it's not a conglomerate, it's not some weird corporate dilution of the essential exchange of here's a good and here's money. It is the actual exchange of a really good and beautiful thing for the living wage of a family. And that's what they do in the agrarian, small scale agrarian world, which is utterly unique. I mean, that is so rare. Because I deal with a lot of farms I have historically, and if you're a small scale farm, small vegetable garden, it's all beautiful. The scale is right, but I could count on, 3 fingers the farms I've actually worked with that are self-sustaining, that generate enough sales to support a family. There's always some other third element that swoops in that is not from sales derived from the product of their labors, that supports things, that makes it possible, which is fine. It's not bad. It's just, it just means that doing it that way is extremely rare. And
so when it gets attacked,
pretty cool.
too, like it kind of did, we feel it more. We feel it with him. He was just promoting the Sacred Heart. That's what it was, and the world doesn't like that, so it kind of got defensive on him. And then the story got a little bit of traction with some media outlets, and I just enjoyed listening to him because he's got a great mind, a great heart, great family, and his wife is not bringing in a second income, a lot of like what can happen, and which is fine, but then they have little kids, so it's not an option, and she schools them. You know, it's just it is the good life. And he talks a little bit about his background, his French background.
That's right.
And that's really, so he's on like 3 or 4 now different podcasts and things for like an hour long.
Yeah.
And, you know, we got a snapshot of him, but he goes into his whole French background.
French Catholics, yeah.
Which is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool.
And I think people that listen to us would enjoy. That listened to those interviews a year ago would probably like to follow up with him there. So we can't really do interviews anymore because that was the one and only, and evermore shall be.
Well, I know. It's hard to do because of our technological limitations, but I think I discovered a program that I told you that would make that possible.
That's right.
Because someone else interviewed me using said program, and he said, you just basically pre-record it, and things can be as glitchy as possible. You know, there could be multi-second delays and freezing of faces and all the frustrating things that happen, but the program automatically cleans it all up.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In the final cut, it just all does that. So I wrote that name down somewhere.
We'll see if us rednecks can pull that together for you. We can do
it. It would be good, because then we could actually interview people.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Yeah. Okay. So, real quick, I wanted to segue to classes, because we have our own things to promote. We are selling 3 sets of classes right now. We just wrapped up our spring classes. So we're taking a little break this summer, and then we'll begin again in November. November 16th through 18th is the first set. And as I speak, there's 5 tickets left for that one. And then we have one November 30th through December 2nd. And then we have a third one right before Christmas, December 14th through 16th. And those last 2 are wide open at this point.
Cool. We'll make Christmas sausage for sure.
Yeah. So we're, this last set of classes was so good. It ended in the nick of time, though, with this land hurricane.
With the storm. Yeah, we had people camping on the land in flimsy little tents and hammocks.
Just a couple single guys.
For the class. And that was Saturday. The storm came Sunday.
Yeah.
And, one of them was from from Arkansas, and he left some tobacco and wine very generously. But the wind was blowing towards Arkansas, and I think had he tried to spend the night out there, he would have woke up in Arkansas. So I'm really glad that they
could have saved themselves some gas. I guess
they got out. They got out before the storm.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. But yeah, the classes were great. We say this for the past 2 years now. It's more classes than we've ever done in a year historically. And Wallace has jumped up, our oldest, and he helps. He does all the background, setup, cleanup, even cooking, and then he even jumps in and helps with instruction. He can help teach people how to do this, and that's really made it possible to do this many classes. Yeah, I would say, and being here with a much larger shop, much more land and farming agricultural infrastructure to be able to raise creatures that we didn't have in Washington.
Yeah. I it's a little bit of a different, for me at least. I'm not out here, you know, so I'm not as much involved in the background stuff.
Yeah.
I'm more of a support to Wallace really now, which is really neat.
Yeah.
So I can keep schooling the kids a little bit. But good people. I love the people that come. I love meeting, because I don't get out much, so I get to meet some really great people from all over the country. Okay, so I also wanted to mention we do have one lamb class too.
Okay, yeah.
So that's on the docket. That is October 5th through 7th. So if you're interested in harvesting lambs, we'll do that too.
So 3 family pig classes and a lamb class.
That's what we've got.
And these classes are starting, especially the pig ones, when you're supposed to kill pigs. Like, that's the
Yeah.
time. When it's a refrigerator outside.
Yeah.
The original refrigerator, which is winter. And everything is easier when you do it seasonably. And yeah, actually, that sort of reminds me of another thing. But anyway, that is the time to do it. For ease of chilling the carcass, if it's in the winter and you are anywhere close to the, in the northern hemisphere, and I think it would even work down here in Oklahoma if you picked the right week. But you just kill your pig and then hoist it further up in the tree and go to bed and leave it out all night in the cold winter wind. And that will actually, even if by temperature the thermostat says, oh no, it's 42, it only got to 42, with a wind, with that cold north wind, that dry north wind specifically, it will keep better than in a walk-in because the air is drier. And that's more the thing. That's always something we talk about in the family pig is we tend to obsess over temperature because that's what the theoreticians in the labs tell us. Because they're doing all of their experimentations and their food safety protocols from a lab. I don't know. That's my theory. And so consequently, they have a very limited number of factors that they actually consider. And of course, they're assuming that all the meat is of the utmost filth and dire quality. But dryness is that's more important than temperature. And so just that small bit, we try to illustrate that a lot during the classes. And it helps free people up to be like, oh, I guess I could just kill a pig in my backyard.
Yeah.
And not have to search high and low for expensive refrigeration. Though that is possible to find. But that's the seasonable time to do it. And one of the things, I got to remember this, unseasonable meat. There is this interesting, mysterious quote in a lot of these Catholic Welsh poems about the Mass. That's what's in this book that you got me, Mass and its Folklore. That talks about the things that the Mass can do. And one of the things it does is it affords you pardon for eating unseasonable meat of a Sunday. End quote.
Whoa.
And we don't really know what that means. It's just it's a tricky translation from the old Welsh,
Okay.
And it's kind of opaque. It's not exactly sure what that means. So worth contemplating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unseasonable meat.
Of a Sunday.
Of a Sunday.
Yeah.
So does that mean you ate it on a Sunday, or this is like Sunday meat? I don't know. It's a little, which is a broader category.
Yeah.
Does it mean you ate meat in Lent? Because that would be out of season. That would be unseasonable meat.
Okay. Yeah.
In which case it means you could eat meat on Sundays in Lent, which has been the historical practice of the church. Or, I don't know.
Or maybe you're not eating meat that's worthy of a Sunday.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. You burnt it. It's not a good roast. You didn't lard it enough.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or you're eating innards or something.
You didn't salt it properly.
Yeah,
it's
maybe you
not enough seasoning.
messed up.
I don't know. Anyway, that was just one of the really interesting lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, unseasonable meat of a Sunday.
The boar's head in hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary.
How many people do you know who are building their home culture around seasonal harvest and feasting? Or that are hunting as you are for self-sufficiency and back-to-the-land values? Or that share your artist's passion for human-scale meatcraft? At FarmsteadMeatsmith.com, we've created a community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world with these shared goals, and 2 major places for them to learn from and inspire one another. First, we have our semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Heartland homestead in Oklahoma. Come meet Brandon, get your elbows greasy, and over the course of 3 days, kill, cut, cure, and cook 2 pigs Completely. You'll rub those greasy elbows with other meatsmiths from around the country, sharing meals and conversations to inspire you for years to come. Secondly, for more remote learning, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources 5 years deep now. And both our on-site classes and online program include access to our most unique and rewarding private community Facebook page, Meatsmith Table, which is the only international network by and for homesteaders harvesting animals on a domestic scale using traditional and regional methods. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you and support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
I had one plug of something. It's I don't know what you call, I guess an online journal that I feel like our listeners would enjoy. It's called Hearth and Field. Hearthandfield.com, I think, is where you can find it. And it's just a beautiful journal of, I would say, faith-based agrarian reflections and for family, type people, really good writers. I mean, like writers, but then also like well-known writers. So some of them are, contributors that contribute to big periodicals and things, but everyone can write that contributes to it.
That's good.
Yeah, there's just, meanderings on being out with your horses and gardening or canning or, it's for the ladies and the gents equally, I think. It's just kind of musings on, grace and nature, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
they get into some interesting topics. One of them, so there can be some meat too. Letters from like Como,
okay.
Romano Guardini from 1924. And this was just a translation by Father Anthony Giambrone. And it's really interesting. It's just kind of a contemplation of nature and culture, and it goes kind of deep and explores the degree to which we can just say, how far can you go before it becomes imprudent or wicked or something in rejecting technology? And, is it, at least some of the things I gleaned from it, and to be honest, I haven't finished it all the way yet, but to just kind of go there for a second in your philosophy, in your brain, given the tools of principle that you have, to think about what exactly is this technology thing? How does it function in culture and upon nature? And should we be okay with that? It's kind of, but anyway, there's a lot there.
There's so much to think about. I mean, do we just chuck it cold turkey? Right when we're in the middle of being estranged from everyone else, and the only thing that can connect some of us is technology.
Yeah.
But then what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like maybe technology is the thing that separated us to begin with.
Yeah, and you can always, right. I always feel like it's a extreme diluted form of connection with another human anyway.
Yeah.
It's always a surrogate for the real thing rather than a facilitation of the real thing. Friendship or family connection or something. It's more of a replacement. But, we experienced that too because power did go out. And I'll tell you one thing that I believe is unequivocally enhanced by the absence of technology.
What's that?
The Mass. The old Mass.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not that hard to argue for because the Mass is, pre-electricity. It's kind of old. It's pre all this stuff. And its technology is candlelight and some goldsmithery and some, marble work, some masonry. And it's much simplified. And I was starting to think, so what happened when all the power goes out during this Category 4 land hurricane is that our church was without electricity. But we owe God the Mass every day, nonetheless. That's what religion is. Rendering to God directly what he is owed, specifically his Son. And that's what is offered to him in the Mass. And so the Mass goes on.
Yeah.
In the dark.
Yeah.
Without central heating. When it's 95 degrees and there's a 60% dew point, or I still don't even know how to say that. It's humid. And it's wonderful. It's so good.
We're all like sweating.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Coughing.
Yeah.
The incense is trapped.
Father's got his cassock, his surplice, his chasuble, his humeral veil. I mean, depending on the Mass, he's just covered in layers.
We happened to have we had a third priest come in town, and so we did a solemn high, and it was like 3 men were just laying it all out up there.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it's not like, oh, hey, you know what, guys, today we'll do less layers.
Right.
No. There's something that transcends physical comfort.
Yeah.
And it's just something as bare, as simple as that.
The Mass is a sacrifice. And so I feel like modern technology has done its best to kind of mitigate that feeling of sacrifice. It kind of muffles it. And it definitely felt more of a sacrifice to be there. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't that hard.
No.
But you felt a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was
I guess.
not comfortable.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Which I loved.
We are not comfortable for
yeah.
an hour.
I know.
Yeah, it was great though, but it made me think about I think, okay, I'm just making this all up right now. I think particularly symbolic things that whose final cause is less dependent upon their immediate physical effects and more on their symbolic meaning. So, like, a lot of the things that surround the liturgy would be in that category. Those things are particularly susceptible to technology. Well, I guess the physical stuff too. But anyway, because you think about a candle, the light from a candle, like our Lord said, "I am the light of the world." So you cannot underestimate or take away from the meaning of candlelight. I mean, it's especially in the Mass. There's, for those of you who don't know, there's a specific number of candles. They're even lit in a certain order, and they indicate certain things about the Mass. And so they're not a small deal, and they're absolutely part of the rubrics. And the thing about electric light is that it dims candlelight. And since the purpose of a candle is to give light, I wonder, like, there has to be a horizon. There has to be a point beyond which the electric light is so overpowering that the candle is nullified. So if we concede just for a moment that there is a spectrum here, there's a continuum upon which you have the candle on one end, the full expression of its light and meaning. That would be in a dark room, in a dark church. And then you continue along the spectrum, basically with increasing intensity of electric light until you get to, a spotlight that is so bright you can't see the candle.
Yeah.
Does the candle count anymore? Is it do you have candles for Mass at that point? If you have a spotlight and you cannot see the candlelight,
Right.
I would argue nay. nay, thou hast
We need
not
some
candles in the
canon
mass.
lawyers in here, though. I don't know.
I know, but come on. I mean, if it totally washes it out,
Yeah.
is it candlelight?
Well,
No,
all
I
knowledge
think
comes
you've
through
erased
the
candlelight.
senses, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Same thing with incense.
Yes.
You have, and I think this goes with smoking meat too, actually. So this has direct physical parallels, but incense, when you don't have HVAC, central heating and cooling, and a constant fan sucking air out of the building and bringing in fresh air, what that is doing, it is sucking out the incense, and you don't notice it until your oldest born is holding the thurible, and he's swinging it, and during mass, and the room is like the darkness is compounded by the presence of the incense. It is made darker and darker by how much incense is filling that space.
Yeah.
And you are just breathing in frankincense the whole it's so beautiful. I love it. It's hard to breathe. And that's because you're not on earth anymore. You're in a place where the air is different during the mass. And so this is not terrestrial air. And so he's doing that, but then, again, on the continuum, what if you had a dust collection system, a vapor collection system that can suck out every particle larger than an oxygen molecule so effectively from the airspace, and you flip that on during mass, do you still have incense
Right.
in the mass? Even though they're swinging the thurible.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is to this, but I'm just saying we have to be careful about the infringements of technology because it generally proceeds unchecked and unexamined because we just place our comfort so high.
Yeah, well, to a point where sometimes you get bishops who are swinging a thurible and there's nothing in there.
Yes.
And we've been in masses there before.
And that happens. Yeah.
And that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then I'm like, oh, that doesn't, why?
That's
why?
non-incense.
Then we're like pretending. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, and that would be much more difficult in a space that did not have central air evacuation, purification. It would be very obvious. Because the thing about a building that is, centrally heated and cooled is you have to look a little bit to see the incense, and you have to smell. Whereas when you shut that air tunnel off, then it's like it is unavoidable. The incense is unavoidable.
Yeah, no, I do think it's almost like you have to look at it through the filter of moderation and like the golden mean, because you have that spectrum that you're talking about. Because I was also there at that solemn high mass. It was dark, and Father, he's over 60, and he was like
squinting.
He couldn't see, because it was so dark.
Yeah,
and he said the words, but like it was also like, oh, come on, Father, I know you can do it, and he did. But it was like he really had to open his eyes and pause, and you can't have mass if they're not saying the words.
Well,
and there has to be enough light, and maybe that's just a matter of like, all the electricity went out a few days ago, so they didn't have time to scramble and maybe get brighter candles or whatever. Like eventually, you would work that kind of thing out, I think. But
well, I think also, just to continue arguing my point, that was also as much a consequence of the dimness as it was of torchbearers.
Oh yes,
that lack the virtue of torch bearing because they've never had to do it.
Yes,
yes,
and
they
that
do.
One of them was my son, so the other son.
there's always torch bearers, always in a mass.
Yeah,
but
they could have held the candle a little more.
Yes, they've never had to do it as
That's
like,
right.
oh, the candle is giving essential light.
That's right.
That's why we're holding these things. In addition to all the other reasons, flanking the gospel and everything, but
it would take some adjustment.
Yeah. Right.
If we were actually leaning on the candles for the light, and the incense, even,
then you would have to the altar servers. They have another job, which is make sure Father can read.
Yeah. Because these are prayers.
Make sure the light is there.
They have to be said. That's the job of the priest. So
Yeah.
if he's not saying them, then we're not actually saying the Mass. So.
Yeah, and that's this encroachment. It's so easy, and it just proceeds. It doesn't even proceed subtly. This encroachment of technology. It proceeds unabated because we just regard, I don't know, our comforts as unqualified goods. That's just what we need, or ease or efficiency, and you can see that in every realm of human life. You can see this on, speaking of smoking, even in a smokehouse, the way we smoke meat. Like we have diluted the smoked meat so much that we've literally diluted smoke, meaning we have made it water.
Yeah, liquid, yeah.
Yeah, we have liquid smoke, or hydrated smoke. I don't know what the heck that is. But, and so it has many gradations, all of which we allow because they supply convenience. And there's another continuum. There's like the real thing down here, which is wood burning, producing smoke. Like firewood from a tree, burning. That smoke is trapped in a building where meat hangeth. You have smoked meat. That's how we build a smokehouse. Very simple. And then you can keep diluting that essential thing. And I wonder how far, so this is ultimately the question. How far can you dilute it? How far are you able to until it stops being itself? When you've actually lost, not just accidents, but the substantial form.
That's right.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
And I want to know now. When you've lost the soul of it, and it's not bacon now.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot. We talk about how, well, if it's not preserved, it isn't cured. Like, that's not bacon. That's just flavored meat that resembles a thing that we used to make called bacon. But because you can keep going on that continuum. You can smoke it with electric wires that merely sort of parch wood chips. Okay, that's one version. Yeah. At least you're getting wood smoke that way. Not from embers, from firewood. From wood chips bought in a plastic bag, sometimes doused in artificial flavoring. And you basically just kind of parch them in an electric coil. Okay, and then you can dilute it again. And you can have pellets. And this is processed wood that is burning at a very controlled rate. And the cool thing about that is you don't have to monitor it. Yeah. Just set it and walk away.
Take away the human element.
Yes, you lose the virtue of smoking.
Because at the one end of the spectrum, it requires a human being monitoring it all day.
Yeah. And it's loosely monitoring. I mean, I think we've talked about smoking on this before. You can do it. You can do the real thing and do other things in the day. But and then you keep going on that spectrum until eventually you're hot smoking all the bacon, so it's a cook step, which is timed and it's short. And then you go all the way to, now you're just injecting the meat with liquid smoke. So it's like an artificial flavor. That's what the smoke has become. And all along that spectrum, at what point did you lose the substantial form of bacon?
Yeah. The essence.
Yeah,
it's
the
really
essence of it.
It's a Thomistic question.
Yeah.
And there is an answer, but it's it's about defining what is the essence of the smoked meat.
Yeah.
What is the essence of the incense in a mass?
Yeah.
The candlelight. What is it actually giving? And
yeah.
And
especially in the mass, I know there are actually concrete answers to that.
Oh yeah.
I don't actually know them specifically for instance. I can come up with a whole bunch of meanings and reasons, but I know there are more concrete, definitive ones. But because it's interesting though, even without knowing those reasons in a fully fleshed out way, these things are intelligible to the senses. Like you can discern them with your senses, or that you can discern their dilution by the technological encroachments. It's very obvious. And that's the way I feel about bacon. You can actually tell just by taste how this thing is denuded of its essence through each increase in the dependence upon technology in its production.
Yeah.
Such that people will taste real bacon that they themselves cure for the first time. They cure it using, just salt and sugar, just like we show people, or maybe even just salt. And then they smoke it with firewood, and then they taste it, and they actually say with their words, "Oh, this isn't bacon." I've had that.
Yeah.
And they'll email me and say, "This doesn't taste like bacon." I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. You've never had bacon."
Yeah.
It's like you have to get to the point where you have to say,
everything
it's not the bacon, it's
you
me.
thought you knew was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it wasn't, you've never had bacon. You've never had the thing in its substantial reality. And so it actually takes retraining to what is real, to the truth.
Well, and
and that's virtue.
Yeah. It's a question of technology, and at what point does your technology take over? And the thing is now not about your product or your mass or whatever, but it's about the technology.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a way to answer that.
Yes.
Because I think about that continuum in the context of the mass. And just like you can't have like an HVAC system like sucking everything out and just making it a vacuum in there.
Yeah.
You also can't have like billows of smoke to where you're basically setting the place on fire and it's like this hazard. And then people can't even come in the building, especially older people, let's say. Like, at what point is it just tipped over on the other side and it's basically inhospitable to life?
An excess of incense?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I might be okay with that.
You're such a purist.
I mean, yeah, because
No,
if you had to hand out gas masks for everyone, that would be the line.
That would be just about right.
That would be because then you're using technology again.
Yeah.
That would be the line where you've reached the excess. If the excess of the thing itself of true incense is reached, it's when you have to employ other technologies to be able to support human life.
There you go. That's actually really good.
We've doubled back.
It's true. We're just like band-aiding our problems rather than fixing them.
But thanks be to God, the liturgy itself provides for this.
Okay.
This is why we have the altar service. The one of the torchbearers will run over and he'll grab the book off the altar. Both times that the priest incenses the altar. So we don't burn it up.
So we don't burn the missal. Yeah.
That's what I assume. I mean, it works perfectly to prevent that, because that's that's paper, super flammable. But I mean, that's always the tension that I encounter on the farm, because here's the problem. I feel like when you reject a particular crutch, a particular technological crutch, then you learn more about the thing itself that you're trying to do. Something that the crutch masked that you weren't aware of before. I don't know. There's a million examples of that. Just using a knife only instead of a gun to kill a sheep. There is so many tactile things, physical things you learn about handling a sheep and killing a sheep, and the way things die by using a knife that you would totally miss out on if you just used a bullet. And even things that you're not fully 100% conscious of, but that are inscribed in your very physicality, the way that you approach death in general, will be taught to you, your intellect and your senses, by using a simpler tool. It's more immediate. Your experience is more immediate. So I'm always in favor of at least doing that first. And that's kind of how we started our business too. Like we just kept going without any equipment for the first couple of years. And when you do that, you get the truth, which is just what is real. The real boundaries, the real limits, the real limits of your own capacity, and what you can achieve and accomplish without the crutch of technology. And then at least if you start that way, you can then decide which technology to adopt for qualified ends, not just as a matter of course. Just like, oh, we do it this way because that's cheap and efficient and how everyone else does it.
Yeah, or an economic gain only.
Right. If you start without the crutch, even on your own farmstead, you immediately become an expert in whatever that thing is. I mean, and you can think about it in any context, like herding ruminants. Think about being a shepherd without fences, right?
Yeah.
Fences are a technology, and I'm all for them because I believe in the ends that the final cause of a fence is good. Does not need to be argued for. Nonetheless, well, and parallelly wise, I am not a shepherd at all.
That's right. I was going to say.
I have no virtue of shepherding, not an ounce. So there's, if you really want to understand a thing, do it without the technology. I mean, bucking a tree with a crosscut saw instead of a chainsaw. The examples abound.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it comes down to also how much time you have, the human scale of trying to get things done for your family, and your lack of prowess, your lack of knowledge or lack thereof. And then the technology can help you attain whatever your ends are. If your ends are to make $1 million, then use more technology. If you're trying to, provide for your family and not compromise your soul in the process, you probably need to use a little bit of technology.
Yeah.
But like you said, you're not a shepherd professionally, though you deal with sheep. So we've had to kind of come into that golden mean of what kind of technology allows you to carry on.
Yeah, and I would even say that the temptation to use, let's say, an excess of technology, that is motivated by a particular end, which I think is profit.
Right.
But profit you have to make because of leveraging yourself through loans. Like it's usury, because that if you you need to produce excess, you need to produce cash from your lamb, which I get. That's that's part of the system we're in a way. But homesteading brings the ends more immediate. The thing we're going to produce with our lamb is lamb meat. That's its final cause.
Not interest.
Not extra income to be able to pay down the interest. And so I think you create this because our entire economic system is based on credit and lending money. Technology has become essential to the economy. And so we buoy up the entire edifice with extremely advanced technology and printable free money. And that kind of at least holds at bay for a while the apocalypse and the destruction of the system, but only at the cost of pushing the ends way out beyond their natural boundaries, the ends, the goals, Like if you just produced pigs to make bacon, that would be the proper end. That's much more proximate to the good of you and your family. And that's the human scale as opposed to the other end of the extreme, which is literally producing pigs in order to liquidate them to make as much money as possible. And this is where you get into, speculation, where it's like farms are a thing that are traded.
Yeah.
Just sell high, buy low. That's the product of a farm. That's its final cause, and that's what we do.
Seems like that was unthinkable in a Catholic world, to sell the family farm.
Yeah. That's a revolutionary idea.
Yeah.
Big time. That's what
Meatsmith, thank you for joining us and for listening to our take on all things meat making, householding, and culture keeping. We hope it's helped you in growing your home around the harvest. This conversation will be continued in a forthcoming Part 2 episode. Thanks for listening, and peace be with you.